Hey guys, Blitzy Talks here. So, many students have a part time job while studying full time or some kind of summer job they do between semesters. For me, though, I wish I'd been working more during my high school days, as this would put me much further along my financial journey. But today, I want to talk to those who are on the fence about working part time because they're worried their studies may suffer or there's some other personal reason preventing them from doing so. By working part time, you can build early cash flow to spend on the things you want without relying on your parents. A lot of students and a lot of younger people, including myself, don't really want to rely on their parents and want to become more independent early on. For me, when I was 10 years old, I started delivering papers around my neighborhood, and on a good day, I'd make between $40 to $50, and that allowed me to go to my favorite convenience store and get my favorite food, favorite drink, with all without having to rely on my own parents. And this taught me a lot of different things. It taught me that I can get what I want so long as I work for it, and I can get what I want without having to rely on my parents and get their permission. When you're really young, you want to build some independence, and always relying on your parents isn't always the best, especially if you come from an immigrant household like mine, who they didn't really have anything to begin with. So, getting even basic necessities was really, really difficult, and we had to skimp on certain things. So, luxuries were basically out of the question. But by working part time, it allowed me to get the things that I wanted. You can also build early connections into different industries or one particular industry. So this one is especially important nowadays where it's not really what you can do, but it's really who you know. So it becomes more of a matter of importance that you really build the connections and really start peeking into different industries and finding out what you like and what you don't like. And by working part time and seeing these connections in the industry and sort of understanding how they work, you can get a sense and a feel of how these industries operate and if you'll enjoy them or not. And on top of that too, you can make connections along the way that you can later leverage down the road. You can also get some work experience as well by just getting these part-time jobs early on, which no matter what it may be will give you a leg up when you're done school. These opportunities may not seem like that important in the grand scheme of things. I mean, for example, if you're a finance major in university and you're working at the grocery store, well, how are you going to work at an investment bank, right, when you graduate? But at the end of the day, all these experiences compound on one another, right? The connections you build, the people you meet, and the skills that you will gain through working these jobs are incredibly useful. And these are things that no one can ever really take away from you. So by doing these early on, you'll get a massive leg up on your peers where a lot of them may refuse to take on these small odd jobs because they think it's they're too good for them, right? They think that when they graduate they can just go apply right away and get like an analyst role in a consulting firm or become an investment banker or anything that pays more, right? But by doing these jobs you really open yourself up to opportunities, and by not doing them you really limit yourself to these opportunities. You can also get used to the time that is required to commit to actually completing the job in preparation for adulthood. So what I mean by this is often people tend to overlook how much work is actually required to do certain roles. So, you're really used to university or school where if you hand in something late, the punishment's kind of harsh as zero, sure, I guess, but it's not the end of the world, right? But in the real world, if you don't get your work done on time, especially in a timely manner, you might lose your job, and by losing your job, you won't be able to pay for food, for housing, for your car, for all the basic necessities you need to live. So by doing something like this early on, by working part-time early on, you will get that exposure and you will get some experience and get used to the amount of time that's needed and used to the lifestyle of a full-time working adult if you don't expose yourself early on, because it's kind of a shock or a bit of a wake-up call, a harsh one at least, when you start working full-time after you graduate. Lastly, you'll be able to build a healthy habit of budgeting your paychecks early on and managing your expenses. For me, this was a huge, huge thing. I really based my life around my budget. I've always budgeted since I was probably 19 or so, and I would kind of wish I did it even earlier. But by having a part-time job and having the money, you start to understand that it's not all about just buy, right? It's all about managing and finding the balance between what you need, what you don't need, and figuring out what your wants actually are, and then finding out what your needs actually are, and sort of finding the balance between the two. And then gradually, as you go along your journey, you might find things like investing, right, or savings accounts, and what types of saving accounts, and interest rates, and all these other things that really make a big impact in your financial journey. For me personally, like I said, I started budgeting around 19 years old. But before that, I just spent a lot on whatever I really wanted to. But at the same time, given the lifestyle, and so this is sort of lucky. I didn't really have that many friends growing up, so I didn't really get to go out much, and naturally, I just didn't really spend a lot. But as I started getting older and I started meeting more people, I gradually went out and realized that, well, the amount of money I'm making, this minimum wage that I was making in Canada at the time, which was I think like $14 or so, wasn't really sufficient enough. Like I couldn't get what I wanted to get, and at the same time, I felt like I was just gonna run into having no money at all, which didn't feel very good. So by having this extra money in hand, I felt like, oh, I could allocate this a lot better. So then I started looking at investments, and this is around the time I turned 20. I started investing, and so through the money that I was making, I just started throwing money more and more in my TFSA, and now, at 25, I essentially maxed out my TFSA. My net worth is well over 200,000. I think approaching the $300,000 mark now. So I think I've done pretty well for myself. And again, this is not just a brag, but these are the things that you can gain from working part-time. And a lot of people tend to overlook even the most simple jobs. You can work a construction job, but and then maybe eventually you graduate, you work at a bank again, let's say, right? And the skills you can gain and the interpersonal skills you gain from construction could transfer over. You never really know. You should never limit yourself to opportunities, especially if you've never had like a job before, any kind of part-time job, as a matter of fact. So don't limit yourself. You could definitely get what you want as long as you just try and go for it. But yeah, that's all from me, guys. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.